I remembered something that happened to my best friend and I a few years ago, and I figured I might share it here. While my best friend at the time and I were seniors in high school, 2016-ish, we went on a weekend trip to visit my grandmother, a couple hours away from my town in Georgia, USA. The town we lived in was comparatively small for the state, but one of the biggest towns within a few hours. But we had to travel about 2.5 hours through tiny, somewhat redneck towns to get to my grandmother's place. We were on our way back home when we had to stop at a gas station, literally in the middle of nowhere. I'm talking cornfields, cotton fields, streets with no signs or lights, not even stop signs, and definitely no cell service. The convenience store attached to the gas station had maybe a couple of snacks inside, but looked deserted from the outside. No other cars or people in sight, and we didn't bother to get anything other than gas. I paid with card, mainly because I didn't want to leave my 5'1", 100-pound friend alone in the car while I went alone inside. Another car pulled up on the other side of the single gas pump while I just started pumping gas. And because of everything I'd read on this subreddit, I already had a weird feeling and decided to stay alert and stand outside of the car with my driver's side door open so my friend could see and hear everything going on. A thin, late 50s-ish older man gets out of the car and seemed to be paying at the pump and standing beside his car while he got gas. But after a few seconds, he walked around the pump and maneuvered himself around my car door to stand within a foot of me and asked if he could pump my gas for me. Luckily, the gas nozzle was locked, so it was pumping without me having to hold it, and I immediately placed myself between the opening of the door and the man, and prepared to either shut the door with me inside or move and slam it behind me to protect my friend if necessary. I calmly told him it was fine, no thank you. He looked me up and down with the corner of his lip tilted up and said,
"Pretty girls like you shouldn't be out here all alone, and you definitely shouldn't have to do this by yourself. Let a man help you, baby,"
and covered my hand with his own as he reached for the gas pump I was holding. I jerked my hand out from underneath his and slammed my car door shut, thinking the last thing I would want is him jumping in my car and driving away with my friend in the passenger seat. Orange flags started tinting red, and my usual overly polite demeanor turned serious as I remembered something I'd read here that said it was better to be safe and to seem mean rather than be polite and uncomfortable. So I responded and said, "Sir, get away from me. I can pump my own gas, and I've already said no thank you. Leave us alone." He didn't move, only raised his chin and managed to make eye contact with me, all lip tilt gone. I stared him down and figured I'd gotten enough gas to last us enough time to get us the hell out of wherever we were. So I maintained eye contact, pulled the nozzle out, and basically threw it back onto the pump before getting into my car and drove away before he had even moved. As we drove away, I glanced in the rear view and saw that his car wasn't even being filled up with gas, telling me that he was driving by and decided to help a damsel in distress out. My friend was shaking the whole way home, telling me she would have just let the man pump her gas. But I'm just glad some of the confidence I'd gained from this sub helped me stay attentive and respond confidently enough to get out of the situation. So creepy, helpful gas station man in the middle of ghost town Georgia? Let's not meet. When I was younger, every year for Christmas, I would drive upstate to my aunt's house along a stretch of highway. I cannot for the life of me remember the name of this road. All I know is that it runs nearby Akron, New York, at some point. However, most of the drive is through rural areas, with little to no towns nearby. So it was the dead of night, and my groggy self had gotten off a long shift and had to drive my ass to my aunt's house since my extended family was expecting me the following morning. Near halfway through the drive, I realized I was low on gas, which irritated me. My brother told me he had filled it up the day before, so he either forgot or was straight lying. I saw an archaic-looking sign for a gas station off the next road. It wasn't an official road sign, literally a pole with a slab of metal attached with "gas off next exit" or something along those lines painted on. That seemed a little sketchy, but people do the same thing with fruit stands on highways, so whatever. I pulled off the next exit on some dilapidated country-ass road through dense woods. The whole thing was creepy and surreal. I kept expecting Leatherface to come running out of the trees with a chainsaw. Anyways, eventually, I came to the gas station and realized quickly it hadn't been open for years. It was all rusted, and the convenience store's roof was caving in. The gas pumps had all been taken out as well. I pulled over next to it and checked my gauge. I would probably only make it another half mile before running out, so I called AAA, and they said that they'd send a truck over. Now I played the waiting game. I left my engine on because when the headlights were off, everything was pitch black, and my paranoid self wasn't sitting next to an abandoned gas station in the middle of a forest in complete darkness. So most of the wait went uneventful until I sensed movement around the side of the old store, where my lights are pointed. I look up, but didn't see anything more, so I look back down at my phone. Then, over the sounds of the night, I hear someone yell,
"Hey buddy, come here,"
in a demanding tone. I look up, and I shit you not, there's a dude standing by the old store, looking towards me, illuminated by my headlights. He looked like a run-of-the-mill homeless guy. I was honestly spooked, and I figure he must have been squatting there. Still watching him, I rolled down my window and yelled something like, "Yeah, what's up?" Still mentally crapping myself. I had my foot ready to floor it out of there at the first sign of trouble.
"You got any change?"
"Nah, I don't. Sorry, man." I look up at him. He has this kind of vacant expression and is standing stiff. Then I see more movement. There are heads. About 20 or so heads peeking around the trees beyond the man I'm talking to. I can't see them clearly at all, but they're definitely people. Literally just heads staring in my direction from around the trees. I see another guy beginning to walk from around the gas station, and then I turn around and sped off. I got as far away from that place as my tank could carry me and updated AAA on my location. The driver came back over and filled me up, and I didn't say anything. But after he left, I wanted to call the cops, so I called the nearest town's sheriff department. They said they'd send a trooper over, and I gave them the location. When I got to my aunt's house, they called me back and said whoever was there was gone, but they could tell a large number of people had been living there for a while. Blankets, canned food, the usual. The whole situation still freaks me out, but frankly, I can consider myself lucky. I'll always have such a creepy story to tell. I'm just glad nothing bad happened. Yeah, and to the creepy dudes at that gas station, let's not meet. I saw someone post a similar story on here, so I figured I'd share my own experience. It was March of 2019. I was 21 at the time. I'm also a male. I was getting gas at a gas station near my house, in a suburban area. A disheveled-looking woman came up to me, asking if I knew where the nearest CVS was. I told her it was just up the road for about 7 minutes, until you reach a major intersection on a business district. Then you'll see it on the left. There was an uncomfortably long pause until she asked me, "Can we have a ride?" while looking behind me. I turn around and there's a man standing on the other side of my truck, looking at us. I politely told her no and that I was heading in a different direction. Without saying anything, she nodded and they both left. walking away from the gas station. They had sketched me out, and I also had a bag full of firearms and ammunition that I was taking to the gun range on the rear seats of my truck, so I wasn't in a position to give two sketchy-looking people a ride. While thinking it was a strange encounter, I got in my truck and drove away. I thought nothing of it. Less than a month goes by, and my mom calls me to tell me that she's watching something on the news about how a man and a woman were approaching younger-looking women at a local Stop and Shop, asking for directions and a ride to the closest CVS. One of those people were so suspicious of the situation that they did what I should have done and called the non-emergency police number. I looked at the news report myself, and it was the same two people. It turned out these two had connections to a human trafficking ring. Their operation was apparently to get into someone's car and then force them to drive to a car they had parked at another location, then take the now kidnapped person to God knows where. Not really sure how that part was discovered, whether through police interrogation or just an assumption. All I can say is, be careful out there. Anyone can be picked up by traffickers, male or female, even in a relatively safe neighborhood. Don't just give anyone a ride. I can't find the news report or article from that day, but if I do, I'll post it in the comments.